It has been years since Guns N' Roses' growling frontman Axl Rose tore up a stage, and fans have been wondering where he went for decades. He is back now, at age 63, but he is not the same man you remember. He stands in the spotlight, looking slimmer and more calculated, with secrets hidden in every chord he plays. Welcome to a trip that will break your heart. Axl has erected a fortress of solitude beyond the gates of his Malibu estate to protect himself from the same chaos that helped him rise to fame. A recording studio inside is filled with unfinished tunes, and a collection of supercars shines like trophies of survival. But beyond the shiny exteriors, the ghosts of crashes and breakdowns still stalk the guy who used to be the king of rock and roll. There is no clearer difference between the past and the present. He used to walk around stadiums with a microphone and command tens of thousands with his voice. He is careful with each step he takes today, as memories of nights filled with joy and sadness weigh on him. The crowd's scream has been replaced by the calm hum of being alone, and every echo reminds him of what he gave up. It wasn't always supposed to be like this. William Bruce Rose Jr. was born in Lafayette, Indiana, where he had a rough life. His father left him when he was very young, and a stern preacher nurtured him, seeing everything beyond the church gates as wicked. He learned early on how to hide behind a grin, how to turn anguish into power, and how to be vulnerable at the same time. He was 18 when he hitched a ride to Los Angeles with $50 and a guitar. He had a voice that cut through the clamor. He felt at home amid the collapsing walls of Skid Row taverns, where he fed hungry souls with honest emotion. He sung about betrayal, wrath, and short-lived salvation in shady clubs, and soon his songs would become the anthems of a generation. When Guns N' Roses first got together, they were like lightning in a bottle, unpredictable, dangerous, and impossible to stop. Late-night recording sessions and reckless abandon drove Appetite for Destruction, which hit the charts like a grenade. Slash's searing solos, Steven Adler's booming drums, and Axl's wild cry all came together to make something primal. But every note felt like a man about to fall off the brink. People all over the world watched as they stormed arenas, set fires with their music, and changed what rock music could be. But behind the scenes, everything were falling apart for the band: late gigs, legal problems, and a reputation for disorder that went beyond the stage. Riots broke out after sold-out shows, contracts fell through, and relationships fell apart. All of it made up the myth that would eat him alive. Then came the crash: Chinese democracy, a maze of studios, unfinished tunes, and a price tag that reached tens of millions of dollars. Fans waited years, hearing rumors about deadline after deadline, till their hope turned into skepticism. When it finally came out, it didn't live up to expectations and got bad reviews. What started out as flawless turned into a warning story about obsession. But after that, a quieter change took place. Axl stopped being the wild child who assaulted photographers or started stampedes in the audience. He started to rebuild on his own terms. He was just as passionate about giving to charity as he had been about living in excess, giving to causes that most people didn't know about. He encouraged budding artists in private, bringing out new voices from the shadows. As the years went by, reports spread about hospitalizations, vocal strain, and disappearances that reminded people of prior breakdowns. Fans held their breath, wondering if the man who used to howl at the moon could still sing songs that broke hearts. Then, in 2025, Axl strolled into a crowd that was roaring, and all of his doubts went away. His voice was like a new man, and each word was full of the scars of a lifetime. It looked like he had gotten rid of the burden of regret. But if you listen closely, you can hear the trembling in his voice, the echo of years gone by, and the fragile gloss of survival. Every roar from the crowd was like his own defiance, a promise that even if everything was falling apart, he was still there and still prepared to suffer for a song. Axl found peace in being alone, away from the flashing camera lights and the beating of the stadium lights. Late nights in that Malibu studio made songs that feel like his scars. Each song has a piece of his tale in it: the youngster who was left behind, the boy who ran away, and the rock hero who was broken and rebuilt. And for the first time in years, he felt at ease, ready to start over and show himself. In the early 1990s, Axl's life became a twisted circus of too much and too little. His crazy marriage to Erin Everly in Las Vegas didn't make sense. It lasted only a few months, was sealed with a random pledge, and was threatened by a loaded gun in the dark backstage. Headlines splashed every damaged account, lawsuits from lovers, accusations of domestic violence that made the rock god look like both a predator and a victim of his own demons. At the same time, Guns N' Roses were riding high on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, a double album that broke all the rules, sold millions, and showed that chaos could make art. But every scream on stage made a larger crack in his spirit. By the middle of the decade, the idea of Chinese democracy looked like a phantom on the horizon. Studio doors slammed open and shut, engineers came and went like nervous ghosts, and Axl chased a vision that passed through his fingers like smoke. He worked late into the night and early into the morning, trying to get everything just right, 50 iterations of a single vocal line, hundreds of riffs recorded and thrown away. The cost of each session went over the roof, and people started to talk about how the record would never come out. People around the world felt both happy and sad when it finally happened in 2008. A masterwork trapped by its own narrative, it disappointed reviewers but showed that a man was still willing to bleed on tape for the truth. There were scandals outside of the studio as well. Riots broke out in Montreal and Dunnington, and the floors of the stadium trembled. His stage boots were stained with blood. People who liked him and people who didn't said he was a loose cannon, a man who couldn't be controlled by anyone. But even in the middle of all the craziness, Axl reached out behind the scenes. He got Steven Adler into rehab, raised money for AIDS charities during the worst parts of the crisis, and surreptitiously gave money to environmental initiatives that no magazine ever wrote about. This duality, an artist who was shattered by his own intensity but nevertheless able to be unexpectedly generous, suggested that there were cracks in the angry veneer. Axl fought with monsters inside himself that no amount of stage lights could chase away. He was diagnosed with bipolar disease in his 20s. He didn't want to take lithium because he thought it would dull his creative edge. Instead, he wrote every manic peak and suicidal valley that smashed into his thoughts. Past life regression therapy gave me a peculiar sense of peace, memories real or imagined of wars from long ago, quests across the universe, and souls that had been connected for hundreds of years. These views, whether they were good or bad, became part of his story, inspiring riffs that thundered with wrath that never died and songs that hurt with the weight of forgotten lives. When the year 2000 came around, the globe saw a calmer Axl. People talked about his $5 million Malibu complex, where he kept a private fleet of supercars behind high gates. Each car was more rare than the previous, including Ferrari Enzos, Carrera GTs, and Spyders. They were symbols, not status, therapy sessions that roared along winding coastal roads with the Pacific as the only audience. A clandestine studio inside was buzzing with half-finished songs and journal entries that had morphed into lyrics. He started composing again, but this time on his own terms. He took bits of recollection and turned them into songs that were about both rehabilitation and rebellion. A charity in his name quietly transformed lives. It gave scholarships to kids who couldn't afford them, grants to families dealing with mental illness, and help to musicians who were having trouble finding their voice. There were no interviews or fanfare for any of it. It happened without anyone noticing, as in homage to the youngster who once felt so alone that he thought he would die. His kindness was a way to fight the idea that rock stars just care about themselves and having too much fun. Instead, he showed that kindness might be just as strong as distortion pedals and fireworks. Axl Rose is now 63 years old and at a crossroads he never thought he would be at in his youth. He still loves the boom of the audience, but he listens for something deeper, a healing chord that has been woven through decades of noise and silence. His first graphic novel, a neon-soaked cyberpunk fable, shows that he is a storyteller who isn't afraid to change the way he tells his own story. The narrative isn't over yet. Every night he comes back into the spotlight and rewrites the last chapter, note by note, verse by verse. This shows that he is finally ready to take charge of redemption. But be careful, the man who used to burn stages down still has raw anger beneath the polished surface. Every song and every guitar wail has scars that won't go away. This isn't simply a return, it's a wake-up call. Fans will quickly realize that Axl's true strength is not just his voice, but also the fire that burns inside him. The lights go down and the crowds get silent as they wait for him to come on stage. Tonight, Axl goes on stage. It seems both familiar and completely new. His shadow moves across the amber light of the spotlights, like a warrior coming back after a fight. Decades of silence lurk behind the clamor of thousands, a silence that comes from wanting to stay safe. He opens his mouth, and the first notes come out, weak and strong like a whisper. Then they ascend, getting stronger with each line until they crash into the crowd like thunder. These tunes aren't just copies of old anthems. They are confessions left naked in song, with each riff cutting into memory. Fans record every moment, and their phones look like flames in a digital prayer. They see the ghost of the young kid who ran away from Indiana. They see the man who lived through riots and litigation. They see the person who survived his own worst desires. Backstage, the world shrinks to thin halls and buzzing machines. As he walks down hallways lined with guitars, each one tells a part of his tale. He stands by one that used to have the fingerprints of youth and anger on it. He can sense the weight of time and its strings. The team quietly praises his voice, which is now worn yet full of determination. He nods, thinking about times when pleadings went unheard. He remembers falling down in the middle of a set and how quickly the story circulated. But tonight, every note sounds right. People in the crowd look nostalgic and amazed. They lean forward, wanting bits of history. They want to believe in both rock and redemption. Every music connects two times, the past and the present. The stage is suddenly full with smoke, and the first riff starts. The drummer's beat runs through the ribs like a right. The lights blink in time with the audience's heartbeat. He leans on the microphone stand like it's an old buddy. He shuts his eyes and lets the music take him. For a short time, Axl is both a legend and a real person. He smiles even if his voice breaks on a high note. He realizes that being open is just as strong as being in charge. Doubts come back miles away. People who don't like a performance tear it apart on social media. Die-hard fans see every mistake as confirmation that the band is real. The myth will never fade because everyone remembers it. He tells stories that are low and rough between songs. He talks of the preacher's house and how music saved him. He talks of lovers that are gone and letters that never got sent. He talks about the studio where he chased ghosts all night. The crowd leans forward and listens to every word. They think they deserve praise, but they also think they have a duty to protect his past. The set changes to new tracks that have a therapeutic quality. Drum machines pulse behind live instruments, connecting the analog heart with the digital soul. Lyrics talk about regret but don't dwell on it. They chart the path from anger to strength. Axl is both the wound and the healer in these situations. He performs with the grace of someone who has learned how to turn weakness into strength. The last chord hits, and the crowd goes wild. He bows slowly, and the noise hits him like a wave. He leaves the stage, and every stride is a reminder of years of doubt and success. He learned that survival is an art form somewhere between being exiled and coming back. Outside, the cold beach breeze whispers mysteries that are buried under salt and moonlight. He walks through the gardens of his estate every night, calmly thinking on his successes and scars. As he reads songs bathed with resilience, the studio lights stay on late into the night. He tests melodies against memories, making harmony out of the pieces of a life that has been faithfully recreated. It sounds like every chord he plays is a promise to get through what almost killed him. He is still a paradox, a tough warrior and a wounded poet, strong and weak at the same time. Fans can feel the tension beneath his resolve in every soaring refrain and whispered verse. Some people think this worn voice is a sign of rebirth, while others think it's the dying gasp of a legend. Now, for Axl, success is being honest with fans, not being at the top of the charts. He plays his new tunes in front of old crowds to see how they feel. Each round of applause adds more stitches to the wounds he bears in his leather and gravelly, harsh tones. When he stops, you can hear the quiet snap of survival reverberating between the thunderous solos of the lines. The man who used to hold a mic as a weapon now uses it to speak the truth. And when the note fades, the crowd holds its breath before letting out a loud cheer of thanks. Encore. He now spends his late evenings in Malibu thinking instead of partying. Axl walks around the immaculate oak floors in socks, and the sound of each step barely echoes off the walls, which are covered in platinum albums and Polaroids of him as a child. He stops at a grand piano that is hidden under a slanted ceiling. The ivory keys have been worn down by years of restless fingers. He takes a breath, raises his hand, and lets the first chord hang in the air like a question. That one note opens a door to Indiana nursing homes, to feeling unwanted as a child, and to singing hymns next to the pulpit of his adopted preacher. The memories aren't nice, but they are true, and truth is the basis of all he makes now. By morning, he's bent over a mixing board, looking at waveforms that pulse with the afternoon sun. He focuses on a vocal take from a new ballad, which is a song about getting back together and feeling bad about it. His throat catches as he growls because he knows how weak he is. He changes the EQ and lowers the reverb, and he listens as the track goes from a rough cut to something that feels holy. Seagulls circle above the ocean, while cars on the Pacific Coast Highway make a low buzz. He flips through old journals full with scrawled songs and sketches. Each page tells the story of a war he won and a scar that is still fresh. A message pops up on his phone, an offer to perform a benefit concert to raise awareness about mental health. He looks at the words with his thumb hovering over the screen. He could have sent back a snarky answer or completely ignored it years ago. He types a brief yes and hits send. He remembers the crowds who yelled out in the dark, urging him to say something, anything, about the horrors he fought on stage. He won't make them wait this time. By embracing this cause, he takes on a new role. He is now not just a survivor of his own chaos but also a voice for others still struggling. That afternoon, he meets up with an old friend who is now an artist. This friend is a graffiti painter known for his big paintings in city lanes. They look over sketches for the upcoming book of Axl's graphic novel. The panels, which are full of neon, show him as a cybernetic warrior, half flesh and half machine, dashing past future skylines. He looks at each stroke and suggests small alterations, like a jagged scar on the hero's cheek and a tattoo-like circuit pulsing on the wrist. These are details that come from his own memory chips. As he watches the pictures come to life, he understands that he is taking back his tale via art, turning agony into something real, electric, and strangely beautiful. Dinner comes late and is simple: grilled veggies and baked salmon. This is a long way from the huge meals that rock stars used to have. He eats in silence, his gaze wandering to the ocean through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The waves smash in a steady beat, reminding us that time goes on whether we want it to or not. He remembers the late-night binges on pills and alcohol as he chews. He used to think that the only way to get away from his own head was to feel numb. Now, clarity tastes better than not knowing what to do. He enjoys each bite as if he is winning a minor battle against past versions of himself who felt trapped by the harshness of fame. As night falls, he walks a few blocks to a modest rehearsal room, where neon GNR signs flash like old ghosts. A new group of musicians has come together, young, eager, and polite. They tune guitars and check out gear, being cautious not to bother the landlord next door. Axl listens to the initial strum of each chord and gives it a light nod and a few tweaks. "Spin that second string up a half step, let's feel the tension," he says. They find meaning in what he tells them to do. They aren't only supporting him, they're also writing the next part of his story. Tonight's setlist is a mix of old and new songs on purpose. The lights casts lengthy shadows on the walls as they start to sing a simple version of This I Love. His voice has the roughness of age and the echo of roads walked. Then they change into a blazing version of a new song called Resonance of the Heart. The chorus is full of phrases about breaking free from prisons that you made for yourself. The practice room is full with raw energy, which shows that even broken voices may start fires. They end with a haunting acoustic conclusion at midnight, with the guitarist's whispering strings mixed with Axl's gentle voice. He shuts his eyes and lets each note pass through him, like breathing out years of unspoken regrets. When the last chord fades, the crowd stays still. There are no shouts, just the faint exhale of everyone realizing that they have seen something deep, a living icon embracing frailty instead of hiding it. He feels the weight of anticipation lift as he walks back through the streets lit by the moon. Tonight didn't need to be a show, and it wasn't. It was about connection, a voice, a guitar, and a few souls sharing a moment of redemption. Axl Rose remembers why he became a musician in the first place, not for fame or drama in the tabloids, but for these fragile moments when honesty feels like the purest form of rock and roll. As he steps off the stage into a hallway full of post-show adrenaline, the roar of London's O2 Arena still vibrates in his bones. From the quiet of his Malibu studio, the difference couldn't be clearer. The sound of amplifiers and the yells of 20,000 people fade away as you enter the dressing room, where walls are lined with sequin coats and leather pants, remnants of a life spent breaking expectations. He opens a travel suitcase and takes out a handwritten setlist for the play in Paris tomorrow. Each song is a sign of both success and failure. His hand stops over the name November Rain, the sad song that turned his sadness into an anthem. He will go back to that moment on stage in less than 24 hours, but he knows it won't be the same emotional maelstrom it was decades ago. Every note now echoes the distance he's come from despair to survival. He pauses near a tiny table where a jacket lies folded. The leather is soft and broken, not because it's old, but because it's been through crazy nights and quiet confessions in echoing arenas. He puts it on and feels the weight of its past, as if the jacket remembers riots, litigation, and late-night studio sessions full of perfectionism. He holds in his right palm a picture of young fans who camped out for days outside a venue, some of whom held up homemade placards that said, "Don't forget us." He never did. That child from Indiana who used to be scared never forgot the people in the audience or the screams asking for more. He'll give it all again tonight. The next morning, the smell of fresh croissants and coffee wafts through the door of his hotel room. His assistant knocks and comes in with a platter of sizzling food. She understands not to ask too many questions because Axl's mornings start off slowly. As he reads a message from a mental health charity organizer, the steam swirls around his brain. They want him to go on a panel discussion on stage in Berlin next week. Before he finishes his coffee, he nods. It's another chance for him to use his own story of agonizing doubt, manic highs, and almost killing himself to help those who are suffering in silence. He thought that having feelings was a sin when he was a kid. He now says they are salvation. Finally, months later, when the tour is over and he gets back to Malibu, he takes off his jacket and puts it on an old stand by the door. He walks to the studio, where new demos are waiting for him to listen to. His home is quiet. He closes his eyes and allows the music take him back to the boy who left Indiana with nothing but a guitar case and a dream. He now has a home, a team, and a legacy. But most importantly, he has a voice that no absence, no controversy, and no cyclone of upheaval could ever really mute. Even after the last encore lights go out, Axl stays on stage in his head, going over every minute of the tour as if each song were a lifeline snatched from memory's depths. But as soon as he gets off the platform, reality hits him hard, the empty dressing room's quiet, the pounding of his heart still racing, and the smell of perspiration and adrenaline that won't go away. He stops by the mirror and runs his fingers down the seams of his jacket, as if to say hello to an old friend. He sees a mosaic of his past selves in the worn leather, the wide-eyed fugitive, the fickle star, and the weather-beaten survivor. Every reflection has a lesson written in sorrow and victory. He doesn't grab for a drink or a cigarette tonight. Instead, he shuts his eyes, takes a deep breath, and remembers that his rock and roll journey has always been more about facing monsters, memories, and the music that won't let him go than about escaping. The horizon looks pallid and shapeless in the early morning light from his beachside home. He walks barefoot across chilly tile floors, his fingers brushing the spines of old vinyl records that tell stories of times when rock music was both a revolution and a safe place to be. He picks out a fading copy of Appetite for Destruction and carefully puts it on the turntable. The needle's crackling makes him shudder and takes him back to those hot, sweaty places where dreams were made in distortion. He listens to Slash's hot solos and Adler's brittle percussion, but his own voice pulls at something deep, primal, unfiltered, and asking to be let go. He recognizes that flaws may be beautiful and that each tremor and rip in the groove shows the truth of a moment that wasn't completely caught. He shuts his eyes and allows the music bring back the yearning he felt as a youngster holding a guitar case on an empty street in Indiana. He gets up and goes outdoors when the last note fades away. The night air wraps around him, as mist rises from the dark Pacific Ocean. He walks to the edge of his yard, where candles make pools of light on the soft grass. In the distance, waves roll and crash in a regular way. Standing by the water's edge, he feels like he will always be alive. Every wave that breaks and every tide that goes out is a reminder that endings always lead to new beginnings. He remembers all the nights he vanished into studios, into dark thoughts, and into the solitude of rehab wards, and he realizes that true disappearance is not being gone, but forgetting how to come back. He comes back tonight, with his heart and voice in sync again. In the morning, you have a meeting with a young singer-songwriter who has been creating waves online without anyone knowing. Axl watches her sing in his private studio, her voice shaking with promise as she sings of grief and renewal. He gives input on things like changing the phrasing, changing the melody lines, and changing the focus of the lyrics. But he learns as much as he teaches. He sees parallels of his own early years when he was weak and sang for coins and compassion on the corners of Skid Row streets. He remembers how nice it was that strangers believed in him and gave him more faith than money. When the song is over, he jumps up and claps, moved by how brave she was to sing about her feelings. He gives her a spot on his upcoming benefit tour, which will transform her life in the same way that so many unknowns changed his life. He looks over the plans for the next volume of his graphic novel later that afternoon. In it, the cyberpunk hero fights phantom enemies that come from his memories on rain-slick streets. He is amazed at how his story has changed as he flips through the panels. It used to be actual blood and bruises, but now it's neon ink and printed paper. But the basic point is still the same: survival isn't about being perfect, it's about being there. He draws circles around pages that show a scene when the hero faces a broken mirror, with each shard showing a distinct past. He changes the dialogue so that it sounds more like a confession than bragging, making sure that every caption sounds as honest as a song spoken live on stage. This is storytelling as a way to let go of feelings and art as a way to tell your own story. It is a continuation of the same story that started with a boy's first song in a preacher's living room. When the sun goes down, he goes back to the rehearsal room, where the new band is playing warmed-up chords and trying out harmonies. They are no longer new, they are now friends who swap quips and family riffs. They play a new song called After Light, which is a soaring ballad with a chorus that welcomes the possibility of daylight after darkness. His voice blends with the band's in a beautiful and gritty way as he sings along. The song builds to a climax, and at that moment, he senses time stop. The boy, the star, and the survivor all come together in one unbroken chord. He tilts his head back, closes his eyes, and lets the last note swirl about him, getting rid of any doubt. As he walks home, he stops by the seashore one final time. The moon's shining path seems to go on forever. He bends down and picks up a handful of wet sand that is gritty, cold, and always changing. Then he lets it fall through his fingers. He laughs at the meaning. The world is made up of small, short-lived fragments, but together they make up the ground he stands on. He takes a deep breath and murmurs to the night, "Thank you. Not for the fame, the wealth, or the craziness, but for the song that never died, for every damaged chord he learned to fix, and for the promise that as long as he can sing, he can change his own story." Axl Rose knows that his trip is far from over in that tranquil place, under a wide starscatter of possibility. The next album, the next benefit performance, and the next book of inked heroics are all waiting for his voice to bring them to life. He turns away from the sea, and the sound of his boots on the beach mixes with the whispers of his past and the hum of the future. He is ready, a living proof that even the worst criminals may become builders of hope. Like music, redemption is as unending as the waves that rise and fall without end.